This is MindFit. My name is Robert Aceves, and I'm here with
Neil Babins.
How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to come back and to do another podcast once again. This is going to be our 14th podcast now, and I'm very happy with the response we've had so far, and I love this podcast. So tell me, how was your your weekend?
Weekend was great. I actually traveled with a group of people to the Joshua Tree.
Nice.
It's absolutely beautiful up there. I'd never been before. And the landscapes are just breathtaking. I mean, beyond breathtaking. It's amazing that this is the same state as LA and, I took a lot of beautiful pictures. We went up to a place called Ryan Mountain, which is an incredible hike. And there's snow up there. I mean, I know it doesn't seem like snow is amazing in January, but it is for me. I don't see snow that often anymore, even though I grew up in snow. And by the time we reached the top of the mountain, there was so much slush that I had to eventually throw out the shoes that I was wearing because I was wearing pretty good sneakers, but I didn't know I needed boots. And nice. Later on, they started to, they didn't dry off too well in the campfire, so I had to throw them away because they were smelling. But there was a lot of slush, and coming down was quite a challenge because a lot of slippery slopes. But it was beautiful, absolutely breathtaking, beautiful, beautiful. Joshua Tree National Park. I really highly recommend it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Well, I just got back from India, and it was quite an experience. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about my trip and religion versus science, because I was in India visiting the Dalai Lama. And are you familiar with the Dalai Lama?
Never met him, but I'm familiar with him. Yeah, that's pretty impressive, though. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing person, and they call him the Buddha of compassion because he's very compassionate, obviously. And, they always told me that whenever you see him in person that he exudes compassion, right? But then when I met him, I'm like, okay, now I know what they're talking about. You can really feel it when you're with him. And it was very eye-opening. One of the things that he always mentions and talks about is how religion, we have all these beliefs that, people follow, and sometimes it's blindly. But we also have science now that can actually, prove a lot of these beliefs and, disprove some of them as well, so that we know what the truth is, right? Mm-hmm. So he has this summit that he does every 2 years where he brings like some of the top scientists of the world, and they meet with the highest people in Buddhism and sometimes other religions as well, and they talk about different subjects and things, and they discuss what the beliefs are in religion and what science believes about these things. And I think it's really important to have that mindedness to be able to actualize or update things, certain beliefs. To give you an example, the Pope Francis, he recently did a documentary a couple of years ago, and one thing he said is, we believe, in the Genesis, and we always believed that God created the world in 7 days, but he said, now we have science that can tell us how the world was created, and we know how it was created, so why not update that belief, right, to what science can prove? And so that's the kind of stuff that Buddhism is also trying to update. Some of their beliefs, they're trying to come up with, new things. And, there's a lot of stuff that happened, but one of the things that I loved is every night we would go out. We were in this monastery, and we had 4 monks that stay with us. And they were, cooking for us and helping us out. And some of these monks are very smart. And I mean, I think all of them are smart, but the ones that we were with were, oh my gosh, particularly smart. And they took us, to do this lap around the monastery, and they call it the Kora. And afterwards, we went to this coffee shop for the monastery has a coffee shop, which was awesome, to eat in the middle of all these monks wearing their red robes. And we would talk about stuff, for 2 or 3 hours about different things. One of the subjects that came up was if, to them, plants do not have a conscience. So therefore, there's no spirit in a plant. And I was like, no, but plants are alive, they're, I feel like the plant has a spirit. And they're like, no, because plants have no emotions and they cannot feel. But I've seen research where they've shown that plants do have feelings. And I believe that plants do have feelings, and so we would discuss this things, and they're open to listening to what your opinions are, but to them, and they felt very strong about this, because in the sutras and the Buddha and all those different things, they show that the plants don't have, they're not sentient beings, that they call them, and so therefore you cannot treat them as such, and so forth. So, but I don't know what you think about this.
Well, what I think about plants. Well, when I'm up there in the in nature, I haven't been to India, but up there in Joshua Tree, sometimes I look at nature and I wonder, my emotions shift, and I wonder if that's just my own perception, or my own interpretation, my own experience shifting, or if there's something else being generated from nature to me. So, I've heard that if you talk to your plants while you're watering them, they tend to grow faster. I don't know if that's true or not, but. Do I think they have feelings? Well, I don't know if they have feelings that are as complex as ours, but I think they may have sensory feelings. They may sense when there's something positive going on around them as opposed to something negative. If there's some destructive force around them as opposed to some positive force of growth and prosperity around them, they may sense things like that. I'm sure I've heard they do have nerve endings. Some of them do have some sort of nerve endings so they can feel pain, physical pain.
Right.
So I don't know. It's a very interesting, I never thought of it. I never, put it this way, as a therapist, I've never had a plant show up at my door. So I really don't know. Although I shouldn't say that. I've had, I've had some people that sort of come across as, as emotionally flat. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
I've never had, I've never talked to a cactus or anything like that. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. I think it does boil down to what you were saying. It boils down to belief. I think that if you believe something to be true about yourself and about the world, you will see evidence for it. You'll find evidence for it, even if it's not there. And you'll dismiss and minimize counter evidence to it. So I think when it comes down to belief, something that can't necessarily be shown in a lab or shown through scientific research, ultimately what you believe to be true is what's going to show up around you. And that's important clinically because that's also how we work with mental health and well-being. What you believe to be true to a large extent is going to show up around you, including what you believe about your life and about the negative things that have happened to you in the course of your life.
Yeah. And we, one of the things that we talked about is because they don't believe that the plant has a spirit and the plant can actually feel. They said that, if you talk to the plant nicely and you say things nicely to the plant, that maybe it's the vibration of your words and the intensity of your words that is making the plant feel better or grow better. But if you talk to the plant in a negative way, that it's the negative vibrations you're creating that are causing that plant to die, for example. So, and just when we just would go back and forth, and I loved that because I think it's important to have an open, discussion of things. One of the days that I was there, we had a debate session with a dilemma, and so they had a group of monks debate different subjects, and they have different levels of the debate, and they this is specifically to Tibetan Buddhism, by the way. Their Buddhism is a lot more about analytical thinking, and they do a lot of analytical meditation where they think about a subject over and over, and they really think intensely into something until they finally come up with an answer for a specific subject. And so they were doing a public debate for the Dalai Lama to see how they're doing, how they do it. And then at the end, he was talking about how it is very important to have these discussions and debates of all these different subjects and different beliefs, because we want to question everything. We want to question what we believe, because what if you're believing something that is hurting you and you don't need to let it hurt you? You can believe something else or change your beliefs, or come down to the truth, because the strongest thing that there is out there is when you can prove a belief to be a fact, and it's something that is the truth, that is going to have an impact in your life, and you're going to change a lot from there. But it has to be something that has that can be proven, and that if I do it at different times and different places, it's the result's going to be the same. Does that make sense?
It does. I believe that a belief is a subjective fact. So that whatever you have interpreted, whatever you have internalized, whatever you have crystallized inside your own paradigm, subjectively and individually, is what you're going to believe, and then hence what you're going to manifest as being real.
Right.
And a lot of it boils down to interpretation. Sometimes you don't even recognize that you have a belief running. You just think that's the way things go. And a lot of things that we do in life is automatic. And when we stop and sort of dissect it, peel it away, we realize that there's a whole set of beliefs, personal beliefs about itself and the world underneath there. And once you shift the interpretation of a certain belief about yourself, about who you are or what you do, then you can shift the entire experience you have around it. It's hard because when you have a subjective set of facts, you didn't come up with them overnight. At least in the clinical sense, they've been placed there over a course of many years, and whereas what you were talking about, more religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs are more religious, are standardized, so, at least at first. You can interpret it differently, but there's a standard set of beliefs that you're asked to objectively universally embrace. And I think that that's the difference between individual core beliefs about self and about well-being and religious beliefs, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think what you just said about thinking, it's really important because that translates to both science and religion. I think that our thoughts, can influence a lot of things that happen in our lives. And I think that's, we could say that as a principle, right, of life, that our thoughts have an effect on reality, right? So if you think, negative thoughts constantly, that's going to have a negative effect in your life. If you're thinking positive thoughts constantly, then that's going to have a positive effect in your life. And some of this religious beliefs, can be positive in some ways, and some other ones can be negative as well, right?
Absolutely. If you have a set of positive thoughts ongoingly, and that's your automatic response to things, then you can shift your belief, and you can create your own vision of the world that way. That's absolutely true. Doesn't mean negative things aren't going to happen to you.
Right.
I think that's the thing, is that most people say, well, I still ended up having a stressful week or a bad week. Well, actually, it's different. Having a bad week in terms of having bad events happen, negative events happen to you, and having a stressful week. Stress usually comes from belief. What you believe is happening to you around you. What you believe about yourself and about the event itself, what it means, the interpretation that you give it. That has a lot to do with how much stress you're feeling and how much unhappiness you're feeling around what's happening around you. It's not so much that you created the event, but you created the whole world around the event and the meaning of the event. So I think that's what my subjective reality is, that, when you say, when you think of things positive, you reframe things positively, your interpretation of something shifts, and then you could have a different experience. Yeah,
I totally agree. And I feel like, when you do a lot of meditation or you pray, you're basically working on thoughts, right? You're like, when you want something to happen, you like right now there's all this fires in Australia, and I've seen a lot of groups praying for rain or praying for the fires to end and for something to change. I mean, it's great, and I feel like there's something there. But I also feel like it's important to do something, not just to sit there and pray, right? So there's got to be some action to our thoughts in order for them to realize, right?
Absolutely. I think what a lot of people do is that they may turn to prayer when they feel they don't have a sense of control over what's going on.
Right.
Because one thing they do have a sense of control over is whether they pray, and they reach out to a supreme, somebody something out there or someone out there who has more control than they do, or they feel that they do. So if you feel that your hands are tied, there's not much else you can do, that might be a solace for some people, because it's something that you can do.
Right.
But the idea is that a lot of what's going on, we can't necessarily stop the fires and stop the devastation unless there's something specifically physically we could do or voice actions and whatnot, but we can change the interpretation of what's going on. Because I notice that, if you look at social media, you just look at the response to news, some people, the same impeachment trials will be going on in Congress, and some people are paying attention, close attention, and some people not at all. And some people say, well, those who are not paying attention at all are being apathetic, and some people might say people who are paying close attention are being ignorant, let's say, or feeding into the system. So it's all boils down to interpretation, how something affects you. It's still going on, and it still affects everybody. Massive fires affect everybody, and impeachment affects everybody.
Right.
But your experience of it, your interpretation of it, and the amount of experience and energy you want to expend upon it has a lot to do with your core beliefs. I mean, your core beliefs in terms of the world, in terms of how you see things, where where you place your sense of control. So, yeah, I mean that's sort of how I see that, and I think that a lot of stress and well-being could be looked at from that perspective.
Yeah, and you know what? Speaking of prayer, there's been a lot of research on this, and some people might get upset for what I'm going to say, but I believe that it's important to look at the research, and they've done research where there's a lot of people that start praying for people when they get sick or they end up in the hospital, and they found through research that prayer doesn't do anything for these people, that they don't get better just simply because a group of people pray for them or not. Now. And I've heard people say also that prayer doesn't do anything and that you shouldn't pray. But I tend to disagree in some ways, because I feel like prayer is a form of meditation. And I feel like when you sit and you meditate, you sort of go into this trance and, enter the spirit world kind of. And there's some stuff that you can come out of that, right? Some benefits from that. Now, when it comes to actually helping someone who's in the hospital, for example, who's sick, and you pray for them, I feel like it's important to wish them well and all, but I think it's also important to do something like we mentioned, to take them to the right hospital, to take them to the right person. And so I don't know what your feelings are about this.
Well, here's the thing. When someone says to me, I have you in my prayers, or I'm going to say a prayer for you, or God bless you, or something like that, regardless of what my personal beliefs are, what might happen is that when someone says you're in my prayers, or you're in my thoughts, or I'm going to say a prayer for you, I feel validated. I feel very warmed by that. Genuinely, because somebody else's subjective belief has me in it. So that means I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I'm valued, and I'm loved, at least in their mind and in the mind of all their entire belief system. So that makes me feel good.
Right.
And when it makes me feel good, I might change or challenge my own personal beliefs about myself in a given moment in time. If I'm going through a difficult time, I might say, you know what, you're loved. So maybe I can go with that and shift my choices in the moment based on the fact that there's some validation going on there, and I might change my outcome as from the basis of that. So I might have a different outcome, a more positive outcome, for one reason or other, because somebody said a prayer for me and told me that they did. So I think that's a possibility as well. But also, you're talking about, I think, well, when somebody's sort of unconscious or in a coma and people are praying for that person, it's important to get the best medical care and whatnot, because prayer itself is not necessarily going to do anything. But people might feel better from prayer.
Right.
And they might then feel self-validated from having said the prayer, and then become more of a positive force around the person in the coma. And that could directly or indirectly affect the outcome of the patient. I mean, there's certain things you can't control medically and whatnot, but I don't know. There could be a shifting in the paradigm, in the emotional paradigm, from having said the prayer. It grounds you, it meditates, you get more meditative, you feel more at one with yourself, more tranquil. And we all know that being more mindful can lead to wiser choices, could lead to more of a core energy choice. So who knows if prayer is what grounds you, if I have somebody who has a lot of anxiety and say, well, I say my prayers every morning, it really helps me. And then, well, then say your prayers every morning.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not interested, honestly, I'm not interested in whether the doctrine or the dogma of what you're playing to is correct or not. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, say your prayers, if that's what helps you.
Yep.
So, and I think that lends into core belief. It's what you believe manifests in one way or another. Can I scientifically prove it? No, I can't prove it. But, I have heard both sides. I read a great book once called Why We Believe What We Believe. I think it was by Dr. Newberg, and it was phenomenal. He did a prayer research as well, and saying what you just said, that there was no evidence that in and of itself, when you isolate all the variables, that a positive outcome directly from the prayer itself. But I think he made a point of that. He said directly from the prayer itself, no. But inadvertently, you cause a chain reaction.
Yeah.
When you throw something out there. So that to me is when someone says, God bless you, I don't say I don't believe in God. I say thank you. And I mean it sincerely, and because it matters to them.
Yes.
And that makes me feel connected to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, when I was in India, in this monasteries, and there were literally thousands of monks chanting or praying, a sutra, and we were waiting for the Dalai Lama to show up, for like an hour and a half. There was something in the air. It was some kind of, I don't speak, Tibetan, but I was getting the vibrations, and I don't know what it was, but I tell you, when I came back, I felt like alive. I felt like something happened on this trip that, I something ignited in me, and I just came back to life, and I started feeling, refreshed, and it was just, just being there, and feeling their energy. I tell you, when I was there for almost 3 weeks, I did not see one single monk cry. And there are males and females, so there are both, but I did not see one single person cry. I had the best time of my life, and I tell you, the conditions of this people that they live in, the bed where I was staying was almost literally a board, like a wooden board, sleeping on the ground. There was no air conditioning, no heaters, no hot water. And they live in these conditions, and they're still very happy. They're very happy people. The smell in the streets are just sometimes not the best because the sewage is open. You can literally smell it almost everywhere in the city, and there's things like that. But they are just happy. They're very happy people, and they don't have anything. Literally, most monks, all they do is they own their robes, and they read and study, and they have books, and that's it. They don't have cars. They don't drive. They don't have TVs. They don't none of those.
They don't
things.
have a Facebook page.
Well, the Facebook page they do. They love their Facebook. I tell you that.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Oh yeah. But still, they use everything they use to make people happy. That's their whole purpose in life, is to make people happy. There were some other things that maybe we can talk about next time that I did not like very much, but for the most part, I really loved it. Also got to meet Gerard Butler for a little bit. But it wasn't a great experience either, I tell you. He was very nice to a lot of monks, and I saw him for the most of the time that I was there. And then the last day we were at the airport, and it was a very small airport in this small city, and we were waiting for the plane to go, and then I see these monks go approach him and ask him for a picture, and he's like totally nice to them and everything. And so then I went and I asked him for a picture, and then he got upset at me because I asked him for a picture when all these monks had already asked him the whole time we were there. And I'm like, why? I just, I felt kind of bad because, he's Buddhist, and I appreciate that. And that's why I asked him. I've met a lot of celebrities in my life, but I never really asked for pictures. But I was proud of him. I'm proud of Gerard Butler for being Buddhist. And then, he wasn't very nice to me, and I was like kind of sad about that. But other than that, I was kind of happy that he was there. And then Richard Gere was in one of the cities that I was at too. I didn't get a chance to see him, but he was there, and so I thought it was pretty cool to experience this and be honest. There were very few Westerners, or foreigners. Mostly there were Asian people and Tibetans more than anything. So and then I got to learn a lot about their culture, and I don't know if you know the whole story about how they got kicked out of Tibet, and I got to go to the places where they're living, and these are refugee camps, so you need a special permit to go in there. And it was sad, man. There's all this people, and they were taken away from their homes, and they, they think about their houses and their, monasteries, but they can't go back, because if any of these monks go back to Tibet, they go to jail for 20 years or more. The Chinese government really doesn't like them, and I understood why now, because Tibet has so much resources, and it's the third. It has 1/3 of the water of the world in one country, and that's why China really wants it, because they have a lot of resources. It's a beautiful country. I got to see a lot of pictures, from this people that lived there, and most Tibetans that I met, they have families still in Tibet, and they can't see them. They can only talk to them. And it's really hard because they can't go from Tibet to India, or from India to Tibet, and they're really literally right next to each other. So hopefully something happens soon, but they're really losing the battle and their hopes. So it's kind of sad, but other than that, it was an amazing trip. So hopefully one day you get to go and experience it.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. And that's what it comes down to, on a macro level. When you find out you isolate the beliefs of the Chinese government and the beliefs of the Tibetans, and it all boils down to what you believe is true, and it all boils down to primary emotions like fear. If I can invade the country, has the third most water in the world, then I have to control it, religiously and culturally in order to get all the resources. Maybe you don't. Maybe people worked together. I don't want to sound too, too pure, but I mean, at the same time, it really does boil down to that. It's about your beliefs. I have to attack you and take you over in order to get the resources that I feel I need. How about just talk to the Tibetan monks and say, we need your water, and I don't know, to make it work, we need your water to make it work. We need water for your capitalist interests, but, just have a conversation with one another instead of having the belief that I have to control you in order to extract from you what I need, because the devastation that we cause from not just religious beliefs, but those kinds of beliefs, that I have to conquer you in order to thrive.
Yeah, it's sad, and it happens. So hopefully, something happens, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. And then, I mean, that's a whole other subject, the whole water thing, because it's starting to become a problem, and a lot of people have said that in the future we're gonna have wars over water. So this is getting really depressing.
Yeah, I mean. When it comes back to core beliefs again, wars over water, really. I mean, because we have such fear we won't have enough of it to go around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like The Walking Dead, It's like post-apocalyptic,
I know. Well, let's end it here before we start crying here.
I know.
So we'll continue next week. Thank you so much for listening to us. We'll see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Thanks for everyone who's following us now on Facebook. And remember, we're also on Instagram, and we are also on YouTube. So you can listen to us on YouTube, watch us on Instagram, and hopefully you can send us your questions, and hopefully you like this. Thank you to all the people who are also supporting us. We love the donations you've already given us. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and all the people that are listening to all over the world now too. So thank you so much for your time and for allowing us to be a part of your life, once a week. Also, if you can recommend this podcast to other people, your friends, please do. The more people that can listen to this, the more they can benefit from it, and the more we can build a community, because the whole goal of this is to create this community to help each other and to have a mind fit.
Right, exactly.
So thank you so much for your time. Thanks, you, Neil. Any last words?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to keep me in your prayers. I really don't. That's really nice.
Sounds good. I'll pray for you too.
Okay, I'll keep you in my own version of my own prayers.
All right, sounds good, man. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next week.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.